Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup CDL betting podcast. We are joined today by our guest, same guest as last time. You know him well, Ryan. How are you doing today, Ryan?
I'm doing well. Excited to talk about some more COD, talk about, the stage 2 major and getting into stage 3 now.
Yes, I'm excited too as well. And it was funny because earlier today we were coordinating this, and then we were like, okay, we're gonna record an hour, and then in that 1 hour we just got so much COD news.
Yeah.
Um, the roadmap for season 3 leaked or was leaked or released. I'm fairly sure it was leaked. I don't know, but it confirms standoff, which is an old favorite of the pros. I think pretty much everybody would be extremely surprised if that did not make it into the map rotation at some point. I think the way it's scheduled for in season, so it won't be out for the beginning of it. So that means we're probably looking at it for the beginning of stage 4. But again, that's a big thing, especially for people who maybe aren't the biggest fans of Checkmate as a map. um, so
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm assuming standoff because standoff was like I don't remember. I don't have a huge lot of feelings about standoff. I did play Black Ops 2, and like I couldn't remember Raid and Express, but then I played them and like, oh, I remember this map. So I don't. Do you remember standoff or not?
Yeah. So I've been playing COD since Black Ops 1. So I do remember playing Black Ops 2, but Standoff is not a map I remember like at all. I watched some old competitive COD videos that featured Standoff, and then I was like, okay, I kind of remember it. But like when Treyarch brought back Raid and Express, like I instantly knew those maps. I think those are more like, I don't know if they have more features in them, or like I can just think of them in my head a lot quicker than I could with Standoff. But yeah, the pros are really, really looking forward to it. They've been asking for it for a while. So I do think it'll come into the map rotation probably prior to stage 4, just because stage 3 is about to start later this week. And yeah, it's Standoff's not going to be in the game by then. So we'll probably have to deal with Checkmate search for at least, a few more weeks. But I think it'll be well worth the wait.
And then, so is standoff is for would be for all three modes, right? Obviously, it's for search. Obviously, is it also good for hardpoint? And then, obviously, I'm sure if it's good for hardpoint, you can make two control zones on it somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. Control, I think you can kind of make control on whatever map you need. But yeah, I think pros are mostly looking forward to it on search, just because in the past it was good on search. So that should transfer pretty easily. I'm not 100% sure on hardpoint. And then there's also the question of, if you put standoff in as a hardpoint map, what do you take out? Maybe they take out Apocalypse. That hasn't been played a whole lot since it's been introduced.
You could take
But
out
yeah, I don't
checkmate. You
know.
could take out checkmate. Just take
You
out all
could,
checkmate in total. Everything, all
yeah.
checkpoint, checkmate.
Checkmate's the most played hardpoint map, which might surprise some people. I think was like it a decent bit. I don't mind it.
I think it's just because of Florida, though. I think Florida, like every time they're like, "Cool, play checkmate."
Yeah, Florida Optic really likes it. Dallas likes it a good bit. It's a pretty popular one. I'd be a little surprised if that went from hardpoint. And I do think like Treyarch or the league as a whole, they don't want to like throw away Cold War maps if they don't have to. Like I think with Crossroads earlier in the year, like there was just so much hate for that they had to replace it, and they replaced it with a new Cold War map, so that they were okay with. I think taking Garrison out was tough for them, but also like they understood like, oh yeah, bomb site A or whatever it was is just like impossible to get to. So we have to sub this out for Express, which people love. And I think it's my favorite search and destroy map now. But yeah, I don't know. Map rotation going into stage 3, it'll be the same as stage 2. I think, unless I just jinxed it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if teams sort of attack different maps different ways. How that'll all play out. But yeah, I'm really excited. It feels like stage 2 ended like yesterday, but it's over a week ago now. Crazy.
Yeah, same. Interesting you brought up about the DLC maps because there are obviously also DLC maps that are coming. We don't know what.
True.
Yeah, they're new. They're brand new. We never seen them. Well, we think we've never seen them. They can sometimes re-release it and make package up differently. So, but we'll see. Maybe they could even sub in. Maybe the one of the new ones could be really good, and they'll sub those into. Who knows? All I know is that we'll all be downloading the same patch on Thursday, and we'll all be playing these maps. We'll be like, hey, maybe this map is pretty good, or maybe this map
Hmm.
isn't good. So we'll all see. But anyway, the other relevant news to the betting portion of this podcast is that the announcement that London Royal Ravens have picked up Zaptius. Just calling it up here. Yeah, they're dropping Dylan and they're adding Zaptius, which means that pretty much the entirety of that Wester roster is now part of the CDL. I think, with the exception of Gravity.
Hmm.
Um, so this is actually the thing. 'Cause I was sitting around and I was like, oh, there's been a lot of roster moves. I'm like, oh, I can't believe London's only made that one roster move. I'm like, I guess they've just accepted mediocrity. And then like 5 minutes later, I looked on my phone and I'm like, oh, they did make a roster move. I was like,
Yeah.
I was like blown away. I'm like, I literally just thought that. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the first thoughts on this? So now, was Zaptius not was Pollux not part of that Westar team or not?
No, I think he was. I'm not 100% like into the challenger scene, but I think right Paul and Zaptius were on that like original Westar team. Now Westar is like I don't even know
The original.
anymore.
We're not even
Like
talking about the. Yeah, we're not a
yeah.
challengers podcast,
But
so
I
we're not
think
going to
that
talk about that.
original one was Paul, Venom, Gravity, and Zaptius. I think that was the four. I could be
Yeah,
wrong, but
Standy was on a different team.
yeah, yeah. Standy was with Triumph and then switched. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, that
Don't
makes
ask me about
sense.
challengers. There's so many moving parts with challengers. I try to keep up, but it's tough. But I do think we have former teammates now, Zaptius and Paul X playing on the same team. Uh, I don't know how I feel about it. Obviously, Dylan wasn't having a great season. He has his moments. When you play like as aggressive as he does as an SMG, like you're bound to have moments where you're like, "Oh my goodness, this guy is unreal," because he's playing at such a hectic pace. And if he has a good map, it's like he's killing like 40 people on a map at once, and you're going, "Holy crap, is Dylan here? Is he back?" And then he has, then one map later he's like double negative in search and destroy, and you're like, oh man. But it's interesting when I saw that Zaptius was added to the roster and Dylan was benched. I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. We'll see how it goes. I don't think it changes my opinion of London all that much. Maybe it helps. If anything, it probably helps just because they're not a great team, so it's hard to imagine they get worse. But the first thing I thought of was I think it was Clayster in a post match interview. He had mentioned that Dylan and Zed, he was like, those two should be teammates for life from here on out. They work so well together as an SMG duo. And I'm pretty sure London lost to New York in that series, or I could be wrong, and it maybe wasn't Clayster, but I think it was. And I was like, wow, that's high praise from a guy like Clayster to say like these two SMGs who have seen like limited success in the league. He thinks them working together makes a ton of sense. And now into stage 3, it's like, well, that whole idea is kind of scrapped. So yeah, I'm curious to see how London comes out. They have Optic Gaming or Optic Chicago, I should say, in their first match of stage 3. So it's going to be a doozy. They're heavy underdogs. We can talk about that match in a little bit, but yeah, if Zaptius does what like more than half of these amateurs have been doing since coming into the league, like London should look better and might give Optic a run for their money. So, yeah, it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely we'll get to that match in a couple. That's gonna be the fourth match we talked about, so we'll get there in just a little bit. I have some thoughts about that match as well. So let's kick today off with the first match happening on Thursday between Dallas Empire and Paris Legion. Dallas Empire is minus 250 on the money line. Paris plus 175. Dallas minus 1.5 plus 100. And Paris plus 1.5 minus 138. My model also agrees that Dallas is the favorite, substantially less favorite, not a minus 250. I've got it, about a 55% chance of Dallas winning, but um, that's kind of that range where it's kind of like, yeah, well, they're a favorite, so that's about right. And the thing is, we have actually had a very nasty the league has had a very nasty habit of having bit large favorites just have blowout wins early in the week on Thursday specifically. I'd love to see a stat on like how many 3-0s we've had on Thursdays. I think it's been a lot. Um, but I mean, my take on it is, yeah, I'm taking Dallas in here. The 1.5 at plus, um, the 1.5 at plus 150, plus 100. That's not bad. What are your thoughts on that, Ryan?
Yeah, I have this pegged as like a 72-28 game for Dallas. So I do have them as pretty substantial favorites. And I think that number makes sense, which means that there's not a whole lot of value on the money line. The minus 1.5, again, not a ton of value either way. But I think if you are going to make a bet on this game, the Dallas minus a map and a half at plus 100, I see it at plus 105. If it's in that range of about a 50-50 prop. I do have it happening at 52% of the time, Dallas winning in 3 or 4 maps. So I think if you're going to bet it that way. And it's weird. You do mention the Thursday sweeps or just horrible matches on Thursdays after majors. In my head, that shouldn't be the case, right? After like a week off, teams adjusting, changing their rosters, stuff like that. Like I would expect underdogs to kind of overperform in those first couple of days or first week, but it does feel like the favorites have been dominant. So maybe we get a reversal of that and Paris come out in 3-0 Dallas and we're going, "Oh my god, what is happening?"
This isn't
Uh
this isn't Thursday night.
but
This isn't Thursday night football on ESPN. This is not. I mean,
yeah.
I get that, but I mean, the thing is, no. I mean, I'll have to look back at that, but like, it just seems, and it's not the Thursday after the major. It just seems like every Thursday is like
Yeah.
there's like a map that's like looks exactly like this, where it's like, cool, we have a favorite, and they either win like 3-0 or 3-1. I think, didn't we have this literally exact match? Paris Dallas is like the first map on a Thursday, just like 2 weeks ago, like 2 3 weeks ago.
I believe
And then
so.
Dallas
Yeah.
won three
Yeah.
one. The question though for me on this match though is, will how will Temp impact this? Temp is
Yeah.
now, and I don't know. He's not replacing Fire. I think they're rearranging things, and I think it could be interesting. It might not be interesting. I don't know. It's hard to say exactly. I'd love to see some more practice on this, but I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to find a reason not to put, like, because if you right now, and I'm on Bet365 here as we're getting the lines, Dallas and Toronto money lines plus 119. I'm just trying to find a reason why not to bet that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and we'll get to that Toronto Florida game in a bit. But honestly, both of these first 2 matches are, in my eyes, pretty similar in terms of like how heavily favored each team is. So, going off of my power rankings, I have Dallas as the 4th best team in the league, which I think most people would agree with. They're not Atlanta, and then they're in that mix with Chicago, Toronto, and New York, and they're in the middle of that basically. And I have Paris. They slid down from pre major to post major. They slid 3 spots down from 7 to 10 now. But I don't think there's like a pit of teams at the bottom. Like Paris are in the same tier as like the 6th best team and the 12th best team. So they're a hard team to figure out. I do think Temp helps. Fire, their former flex player, was really, really struggling over the last stage, really. So I think Temp brings maybe a little more consistency. He can flex. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work out. Classic for sure will stay on as an SMG, I think. And
Classic's actually been like insane. He's been like really good.
he's shown improvement, and then Aqua is for sure the main AR, and I think you can kind of do whatever you want with Scraps and with Temp as Flex or this other SMG or whatever. So um, I think they'll be a little more consistent with Temp. And because of that, I think this game as a whole, from a betting perspective, is a stay away from me. Again, if you have to bet it, um, Dallas minus a map and a half makes sense. If you're feeling risky, I can see Paris like plus 180 in that range, plus 185, plus 175, whatever it is. If you like the roster move, I think you can make a case for that. But yeah, this is more of just a wait and see match for me, because I mean I can see Dallas just coming out and being like, "Hey, we fixed stuff. Like our search is better." If their search gets better, because right now it's still kind of shaky. Um, I think we could see a 3-0 here, to be honest. But Paris has been pretty good, actually, when it comes to hard point and control. So I think most likely scenario, we probably get a Dallas 3-1. Um, but I don't know. I'll probably be wrong then, because these matches that seem easy to figure out never really are. Like, they just always seem like they end up in a weird spot.
The thing that gets me with Dallas though is that they're the grinding team. Like even in last year, we saw this where like they looked midway through last year they didn't look the greatest, but then they just grind and they grind and they grind and then eventually they grind out that win. They just become the best team through just grinding, just sheer practice and the grind, right? I almost wonder if we won't like is this the start is this the time where Dallas is gonna just start grinding and then they just like because like they're gonna play like hours and hours a day, right? Like, is this the time when they're gonna have more experience in this than the new Paris roster, and then they can just dominate? I don't know. I don't hate the idea of, and we'll talk about the Toronto game now, but I don't hate the idea of like a Dallas Toronto parlay. I'll have to see it. I'll
Yeah.
look back at the stats. Just a money line parlay, I think, is not a terrible idea, but we'll see. I'm not sure if I'm gonna take that on yet or not. And then now we'll go on to the next map. So now we've got Toronto and Florida. Toronto is minus 175 on the minus line. Florida plus 125. Toronto minus 1.5 is plus 150. Florida plus 1.5 is minus 200. Um, Florida has also made a roster change. They've dropped Slack. They are now bringing in Havoc, I believe.
Yep.
He was with them last year. I can never remember who the fifth person on Florida was last year because it was Pharaoh, Frosty, Awakening,
Havoc and Skies.
Havoc, and Skies. Yeah,
Mhm.
and obviously they still have Awakening, Skies, and then um, Havoc, Waking Sky, Havoc. They have Havoc, Awakening Skies, and now Neptune. I I don't know. I don't think like I didn't think Slack was necessarily the problem. He was part of the problem, but I think the problem was Skies just not turning up, and it might be a meta issue. Skies has like a couple good maps here and there, but it was like a meta issue or something like that. I don't know. I don't love Florida in this. Toronto usually has a really good matchup against Florida. They've just seemed to always beat them. And even when we saw the stage two for stage two when they got to pick, Florida put Toronto in the other division because they just said we just can't beat Toronto. And I don't know. I kind of like the money line. I minus 1.5 at plus 150. That seems like not terrible odds either. I kind of like the minus 1.5 on that. What do you think?
Yeah, Toronto is not getting enough respect at all, I don't think. And last I checked, Toronto was like minus 200-ish on the money line, and then I checked again just recently and they're down to minus 170. So people are liking Florida. I'm not I, I would bet Toronto. Money line is showing a little more value to me than against the spread, which is a little bit of a surprise. But most of that is just due to the fact that Toronto should be heavy favorites in the search. Um, so there is a very real chance that this goes to a map 5, and if it does, I think Toronto win. But Toronto to win in 3 or 4 maps, so the minus 1.5, also shows good value. I think it's personal preference, but I think Toronto is definitely the side you need to bet. Last stage was not a fluke. They're legit, like very, very good. And just to pull up my power rankings, they are third now in the league, just behind Atlanta, who's on their own tier, and then actually Optic Chicago is 2, which might surprise some people. But and it's important to note my power rankings, my model doesn't wait for recent performance. So you could make the case that Toronto should be the number 2 team in the league, and actually Florida has been looking worse as of late. Um, I know they won their map or their match against LA Gorillas, and then I believe they lost to Seattle in the major. So they go 1-1. That's fine. They're somewhere in the middle of the pack to back of the pack. I have them as the 9th best team in the league. So we have the 3 versus the 9. Again, it's about a 72-28 game for me. And yeah, I really like Toronto. I think pairing them up with Dallas in a parlay makes a lot of sense. Um, but the thing with Florida, we talk about, right, roster changes helping teams. I don't know about this one. Like, Havoc is a good player, and I don't know. He doesn't have that same sort of like upside, I guess is the right word, as like an amateur that you're bringing, like Zapdius going to London. Like we don't know. Like Zapdius could be a top 6 SMG in the league. Like he could be Standy for Minnesota. We don't know. And if that's the case, then London is a lot better than what they've shown. With Havoc, it's like they had him on the team at the start of the year. He was going to be their starter alongside Slacked, I think, or I don't remember exactly. But Havoc is featured in like the Florida Mutineers like pre-match hype video, which I think is really cool. Actually, theirs is very good, but I think it's kind of funny how like Havoc has been in their video the entire year, but he hasn't been on the team. So I don't know how I feel about it. Maybe he's like hungry. Havoc is like hungry to show what he's got back in the league. Uh, so you can make a case with that. I think with Florida, their big problem is just I think Awakening and Skies are like almost too similar of a player. Like I think they both really like to play slow with the Krig, very backed off of their SMGs. So I think there's this weird dynamic where Skies and Awakening are playing too close to each other and they're just kind of letting their SMGs go out, and like the team's just disconnected in a way, and in a literal way too. They don't play in like in one facility like a lot of other teams do. They have like a guy, like I think Awakening plays in like Pennsylvania and Skies is wherever, and they're just kind of scattered around the country, so they're not that cohesive unit. I think that's honestly affecting them a little bit as a whole. So I like Toronto a lot, and I think it'd be honestly a little silly to back Florida. But again, we're coming off of a stage. You know, teams make changes, teams try new things, and if Toronto is just a team that got hot at the right time, then okay, I can see Florida winning, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know. I don't think that like when you're looking at this, I don't know. I think that the Florida team it can improve, but I'm not necessarily banking on a massive improvement right off the bat. I don't think that the problem and I said this before, I just don't think the big issue um was the ones that like I think this team has a bigger issue, and I think it's more meta and stuff like that. I think there could be better teams than Florida. Florida hasn't looked good recently. I have adjusted my model a little bit. I'm taking into account more recent results now. So after the new stage, I'm taking into account more recent results to kind of get a better thing because I had upweighted a bunch of older results. So now I've pretty much downweighted anything before stage 2 week 3 and then the major. Those are the have the biggest weight. Things after that have half the weight, etc. So it's a bit more recent now. I kind of like it. Maybe it's a bit too aggressive. Maybe I should put some on the second week, but we did see some changes coming into the third week. So I don't know. I still like Toronto here. Florida needs to show me that they can compete, and I just don't think like Toronto is still a good team. Toronto has a problem though with like expectations because once you start putting an expectation on literally any Toronto sports team, they instantly start crumbling. So,
Yeah,
um,
okay.
as a Toronto sports fan, so we'll see. I don't know. I still think this is a fine match for them. I think I worry more about them in some other matches though. But I think for now, I think that's fine. I still like that the -1.5 at +150. I kind of like that line too. But anyway, um, looking now to the Friday matches. The first match is Seattle versus the LA Thieves. Um, on right now, Thieves on money line is -138. Seattle is +100. Um, Thieves -1.5 is +162. Seattle +1.5 is -225. I've got this match. There's only a 54% chance for the Thieves. Um, that's not horrible. That's not great though. I I think this is kind of still close. There's maybe some value on that money line. Maybe on the -1.5. That's not horrible either. It just depends on what we see, right? I think looking at the Seattle roster and especially looking at the stats, it's very clear the problem is Looney, right? Pristini's doing great. Octane's doing great. Gunless is also phenomenal right now. Those guys can't really step up that much more. It's very clearly Looney is the drag on this team, but then at the same time he'll make some awesome plays and like search and destroy or something, right? And that's why it becomes so hard to drop some of these players. I kind of think that on some level, I think they probably do need to make a change. It probably needs to be Looney for someone, maybe some sub. They need some sub support somewhere. But I don't know. I don't know if they'll actually do it or if they do it mid stage or whatever. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you give Seattle a chance in this match, or do you think this is? I mean, the thing is, we do see the thieves were basically called out. Like we thought everybody thought they were kind of done going into stage two, major. They did amazingly well, and then they just got blown out by Toronto there. But then, that being said, that basically was the spark of Toronto's like crazy run there. So the question is, do we think that what thieves do we think we're going to see now? Are the thieves going to take a step back now, or are they going to keep going as the same thieves that we saw there before?
I I think they continue this hot streak. I do have this game or this match pegged as the closest for any that are on Thursday and Friday of those four. I have Thieves winning about 66% of the time, so kind of a two-thirds to one-third situation there. So I do see a little value with taking Thieves on the money line. Actually, shows a little more value than against the spread. Um, and yeah, I don't know. With Thieves, they had a really impressive major. Yeah, they won 3 matches, I believe, until they ran into Toronto, who again were the eventual champs, and lost to them. But of all the teams in the CDL, they made the biggest jump in terms of power score for me. They moved up 3 places, so they are now the 6th best team in the league according to my model, up 3 spots from number 9. The only other team to make that big of a jump was Toronto. They went from 6th to 3rd. So a big jump for them. We talked a little bit about Seattle when we talked about Florida. They went 1-1 in the major. They beat Florida and then ran into Optic, I believe, and lost to them. Kind of an expected way to go out, I think, for them. I think they were a bit lucky to get that like first round bye in losers bracket. But they did take care of business, beating Florida. But they still, to me, I don't know. I worry a lot about them, especially with control. I think the reason Seattle beat Florida, I think the biggest reason was because control was played on Garrison. And that's Seattle's one good control map. If you take that out, they don't have any control wins on raid or on checkmate. So just auto veto that against them. Even if you're bad on Garrison control, like or even if you're bad on it, like Seattle is horrible on anything not Garrison. So I like Thieves a decent bit, not as much as I like Toronto in the prior match, but I do think they keep it up. I think when you take out a guy like Slasher, he's a presence on the team, like he was kind of their captain, their leader. You take him out and you see that much success. I think that goes to show that there was just a problem. It's like a locker room problem. If you talk about football or basketball or whatever, where you take out a player who is talented and the team shows instant improvement. It goes to show that it was more than just gameplay that mattered. And Slasher's a pretty intense guy, and the other guys are a little more relaxed. So I think they just went into that major a little more relaxed, a little vibier, if you will. And it worked. It worked until they ran into Toronto, who again are one of the best teams in the league. So them losing is not, the worst thing in the world. So I do like Thieves quite a bit. Obviously, that could have been a honeymoon period. We talk about that a lot with bringing in new players. Venom was still a relatively new player at the time. Draza was playing his first CDL matches of the year. So now that teams have VOD on them, maybe Seattle can adjust and take the series. It wouldn't shock me if they did. But again, it just comes down to control. Seattle, they have to show improvement in that game mode, or else they basically have to win 3 out of 4 games in order to take the series.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I do like the improvement on this thieves team. I'm really starting to like this team now. This team reminds me a lot more of last year's, well, Optic LA
Yeah,
team, but
totally,
it reminds me a lot
totally.
more of that. You got Draza now, you've got Kenny, you've got um, I mean Venom's obviously new. You got TJ, but Slasher's gone, and then I think something else. Who else has been dropped from that team now? There's someone else who wouldn't be there.
Temp was on
Temp.
earlier this year.
No, 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 no. From last year. From last
Oh,
year's
at the end of the year, Optic Gaming had Hollow, but I think you can kind of make the
Hollow. Yeah,
case that
yeah,
like Venom is that guy now.
yeah.
Draza's still Draza. Kenny and
And then
Tej are still them.
you just drop Slasher. So
Yeah, yeah.
I definitely think there was some issue there with Slasher. And the question is, will he be back the rest of the year? And the answer is probably no. And then I honestly wonder if he get picked up by some other team. And I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's tough to say. Main AR is a tough place to be. Like
Well,
the slasher's
LAG needs
really
help with that,
good.
but
That's yeah. I don't think Assault is horrible, but and I just don't think those guys on LAG are gonna split. So I don't know where Slasher goes. Yeah, it's gonna be tough. I know he's talked about retirement the last couple years. I think that was more to do with like the switch to online last year really hurt him, and that whole team that he was on was pretty toxic, and there was a whole thing with that. So
you stayed on the same team.
yeah, and yeah, there's all that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what he ends up doing. I don't. It'd be weird to see him in challengers, but maybe he does that. But um, I just don't know who really would want to pick him up. I think main AR is a pretty like set in stone spot for a lot of teams, so it'll be tough.
Yeah. All right, so now moving on to the next match here, we've got Optic versus Ravens. We talked about this a little bit before. Optic is minus 500 on the money line. Ravens are plus 333. Optic minus 1.5, minus 200. London plus 1.5, plus 150. Um, I like London. I think that I want to see. I'm not buying this Optic team. I think when I in the last time we had this, I said like I don't know. Are we really supposed to buy this Optic team now that they turned around and then beat Seattle 3-0 and then they did. That's right. They beat Dallas like 3-2 in the last match of the stage 2 regular season. Uh, I I I don't know. And then they go into the major. They start off by losing to Toronto, I think, or did Toronto play someone
Yep.
before them? Yeah, they lost to
Yeah. No,
Toronto.
they lost to Toronto.
Lost to Toronto. Beat Seattle, but that was not particularly convincing. That was still four. They won 3-1, but that was still four pretty close matches. And then they go out later to who they who they get knocked out by.
Minnesota in that
Minnesota knocked them out.
heartbreaking series. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. When they all lined up. But I mean, I don't know. What I want to see is I want to see because the meta has changed, right? Or are they going to still play in the old patch? Because if I assume it's changed. And at this point, if they still can't play with the FFAR, I just don't think Dashi is a great Krig player. He's definitely changed from the QBZ to the Krig, but I just don't know if this team is strong enough with Dashi on a Krig that they could do this. And then also you're going to get a brand new team. You're getting Zaptius in this London team. Your two former teammates from Westar. You're going to get Shawnee and Zed. They're not gonna have a ton of VOD review on them. Like I think we could see an upset here. I definitely like the plus 1.5 at plus 150. Maybe even sprinkle a little money line there. What do you think?
Yeah, this is one where I'm not even really paying attention to my model. My model has this as a 89-11 match, so that's obviously a little on the high side.
I've got
Um,
60 roughly 60-40. 62
yeah,
62-37, yeah.
yeah. So here's the thing I'll say about Chicago is they're a good team, and I think they are maybe one of the unluckier teams in the league. We look at that Minnesota series, and it's like, wow, they should have had that. Not only in that round 11, but I believe they were up by like 3 rounds in that search and destroy and just could not finish at all. Um, And, they lost to Toronto in match one, which at the time was like, oh, that's a pretty big upset. And now it's like, oh, wait, actually, Toronto is on that same tier with them, with Dallas, with New York, those teams. So that loss doesn't, that I'm not too worried about. The loss to Minnesota was a series they probably should have won. Although the Seattle one was maybe a little closer when you dig into it, they still kind of took care of business on that end. So I do still like Chicago a lot. Dashy on the Krig, I think, is obviously not the same player as he was when he was using the XM4, but I still think he's one of the better flex players in the league. I think with them, it's more of a Scump and Envoy just never seem to be on the same page, or like we watch Atlanta and we see Simp and Abizi just kind of like work off of each other like for an entire map. And maybe that means Simp has a crazy map or Abizi has an amazing map, or they both kind of do really good. But with Chicago, it's like Envoy has a good map, Scump has a horrible map, or the other way around. And Formal's always kind of, good, like he's a solid AR player, and Dashy's always solid. But those two, they gotta, I don't know what the issue is, but it never seems like they're working close enough. And Envoy obviously likes to do his own thing. He likes to solo flank stuff. And maybe that's just not working for him. So maybe he needs to play a little closer to Scump. Maybe Scump needs to help Envoy on his flanks. I don't know exactly what it's got to be, but there needs to be a minor adjustment there. I think when they figure that out, they're going to be a scary team. But again, London, I don't know what to think. Like, Zaptius could come in and be absolutely amazing. I don't think he'll be absolutely amazing, but I think he could be good. And is good enough to beat Chicago? Probably not. But I can see making a case for maybe, sprinkle on the money line at over plus 300. That I don't hate that.
Yeah, that seems like, and I mean,
Because
even the plus 1.5. Like, is it? And again, you said, is good enough to beat them? Well, is good one enough to cover? Is good enough to cover
that's
the plus
true.
1.5? Right. That's the thing.
Yeah. The thing with the spread, Chicago is such a good hardpoint and control team that winning in 4 maps or less is a pretty likely outcome. So for London, to cover that plus 1.5, essentially you need them to for sure win that game 2 search, which Chicago has shown a lot of improvement in. And then they got to take like their hard point pick. London, I'm talking about. They have to take like game 1 or game 4, whichever one is their pick, or somehow beat Chicago in control, which I don't really see happening. Obviously, crazier things have happened, but I think if you're going to bet London, I like sprinkle on the money line more than the plus 1.5.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so now one of the teams we haven't talked about yet, LAG. So this is as we talked about, we hit on them a little bit, but it's a team that refuses to make any sort of lineup changes. They have playoff against Paris at 3 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday. Paris is minus 175 on the money line. Um, LAG is plus 125. Paris minus 1.5, plus 120, and LAG plus 1.5, minus 163. My model actually has LAG favored here. I don't know. That doesn't seem horrible. I don't know. I definitely see some value on LAG here, especially if Paris gets uh, bought up. But the thing is, what you want to do is if you want to bet LAG, probably bet LAG before Dallas, because if you bet them before, if you bet LAG, because if Dallas beats Paris, then their price will fall and maybe it gets equal. But if they beat Dallas, then it would go. Then that line would obviously balloon out more. But I don't know. I don't know if there's big enough. Just like Temp is a known quantity, right? And while he's good, I don't know if he's good enough to fix the team as a whole. I don't know. Maybe they can get Dallas to him at 5, but I don't know. This LAG team is pretty good and consistent. I mean, we got burned on them in the major against Florida, but I don't know. I don't hate LAG here. What do you think?
Yeah, I have LAG favored too, and that's probably going to surprise some people. But the thing with them is they are all of the sudden the best search team in the league, according to my model, and it's less to do with them showing up at the major because they really didn't. It's more Atlanta has shown that they are not on a tier of their own in terms of search and destroy. That mode has really slipped up for them. So LAG all of a sudden is, very narrowly the best search team in the league, and Paris is the worst in my model. So that is a huge discrepancy in that game mode. And we see search kind of go, both ways a lot of the time. It's a mixy game mode, but um, I think LAG can take either the game 1 or game 4 hard point. The control, I think, should be close. LAG's record in control is not necessarily, it doesn't look good, but you dig into their performance within game, and they should have more wins in control than they do already. So I think the most likely scenario with this series, I have LAG winning 3-2 over Paris, probably taking both searches and the control, or both searches and one of the hard points. So it should be pretty closely contested. I actually like the money line play a little more than the +1.5, just because kind of the same thing with that like Chicago London series. Like if Paris wins, they're doing it in 4 maps. They're going to take right hard point, control, hard point, most likely, if that's how they do it. So I think LAG money line does make quite a bit of sense. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they ever decide to make a roster change. I don't think they need to. I know a lot of people are saying they should, but I think if they stick it out, work out some errors that they've been having in hardpoint and in control, and just kind of maintaining what they've been in search for the whole year, they've been solid in that. They could be, this team that just causes upsets and gives a lot of people headaches.
What about this alt spread LAG -1.5 +300? What do you think about that?
Plus 300. So I have them minus a map and a half at about 28% of the time. So there's a little bit of value on that, but again, you're asking them to take then two, so probably like a hard point, obviously the search and a control. Um, and yeah, they very well could, but I'd just much rather take them to win the series because it's probably, if anything, going to be in 5 games. But if you want to get a little risky, then taking them minus a map and a half, I can see happening.
We'll have to see. I don't know. I think it's fine. I wonder how many series LAG they usually get blown out or go to 5. I think. Um, So I have to look back at that, but I kind of don't. Yeah, I think money line and maybe the +1.5 isn't that bad. Maybe the plus money line standalone and the +1.5 in a parlay doesn't seem horrible. Next up, Minnesota Rocker and the Florida Mutineers. Minnesota is -125 on the money line. Florida -110. Minnesota -1.5 +200, and Florida +1.5 -275. Minnesota, that good hardpoint team, Minnesota, eh? Um, I don't like this line. It seems small. I have it about right though. I have Minnesota 54% chance, which is -118, -125. So I have about even. Um, Kind of think it's a bit unfair because they had to play Toronto, so their stock's a little down at this exact moment. But I don't know. I kind of think the -1, especially if Minnesota is going to be really good at hardpoint, if they can kind of iron out the search against a Florida team that's brand new, well, not brand new, with a new roster change, that -1.5 is not terrible. That -1.5 at 200 is actually a pretty good value there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you're going to take a bet in this series, Minnesota minus a map and a half makes the most sense. I have this series as essentially a stay away. And just listen to these matchup odds specifically. So in a generic hardpoint match, I have Minnesota 49%, Florida 51%. And again, maybe those are a little off because we have seen Minnesota improving a lot in hardpoint over the last few weeks with Standy. But just, for the record, just my model, 49-51. Search and destroy, Minnesota 54, Florida 40. I'm trying to do the math. 54, 46. And then control Minnesota 49, Florida 51. So my model thinks this is a stupidly close match where Minnesota is a slight favorite. And again, maybe should be more than 52% favored, maybe 55, something like that. Um, but yeah, if you're going to bet this, Minnesota minus a map and a half does make sense. Um, but man, this is tricky for me because go back to the major and I think people are kind of overestimating how good Minnesota is, even with Standy. Just go match by match in the major, right? So they get a bye. Luckily, they got a bye with all the tiebreakers. They're the number one seed. They await the winner of New York and Dallas. Dallas end up winning. They play Minnesota, and Dallas beat Minnesota in a very close series and move on. And that was one where the control had like zero point 0.1 seconds on the clock, and Dallas clutched up. And
That
it's
was
like,
yeah, that was ridiculous. And
yeah,
then
a heartbreak. Yeah.
didn't it go to around 11? Oh, that was the team nade too.
Yeah, Miami. Yeah. So you talk about a heartbreak of a series. Minnesota was on the wrong end of that for sure. They
And even
showed a lot.
actually, yeah, just on that team nade, because it was so. If you see the camera angle from that, it was so weird that normally you throw the nade in front of you, but Attach was at some sort of weird angle where he threw the nade, but it hit him on the side. It was the weirdest angle. Like it was like a
Something
one in.
I think they were stacked up really close to each other. So when you go to throw a nade, there's maybe a little bit of like a, I don't know, the nade's kind of behind your head, and I don't know if I think that was what happened. It's tough to tell. But just very, very unfortunate for Minnesota. Um, but they showed up. They actually graded out better than Dallas despite losing the series in my model. So, a tough, basically a 50-50 match that they were on the wrong end of. They get down to losers bracket, right? They have to play Optic Chicago, who just came off beating Seattle. And kind of the opposite happens, right? They're in a 50-50 match that goes their way. But I mean, holy moly, the way that ended, like Minnesota probably shouldn't have won that round 11. And Chicago, despite losing the series, graded out better in my model. So what do you do with Minnesota? They were on the right end of something with that. They were on the wrong end in the series with Dallas. And then they run into Toronto on Championship Sunday, and they lose 3-1, I believe, and Toronto go on to win the whole thing. So, a tough loss, but Toronto are a very good team. So Minnesota, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like, yes, they went 1-2 in their matches in the major. They could have gone 2-1, I guess you could make the case. But they very easily could have gone 0-3 if they were allowed to play 3 matches. But yeah, I mean, they're the slight favorite unless Havoc and the Florida Mutineers show us something in their first match. Um, like a lot of something. I think Minnesota will remain favorites. But this is more of a just wait and see kind of a match for me. I think it should be a really, really good one. I think it's pretty likely to go to a game 5. And yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts from you?
Well, that's actually the thing, right? So if because these markets do adapt, right? If you want to bet Minnesota, bet it now, because
Yeah.
if you're under operating under the assumption that Florida will lose to Toronto, then Minnesota goes up to like minus 150, and then Florida's down to like plus 110.
Yes.
So, and
Yeah.
then also that's another way you can kind of on some betting sites, Bet365, you can cash out, right? So if you wanted to bet Minnesota minus 1.5 plus 200, hope on and basically just a bet on Toronto beating Florida, because if they do, then that plus 200 probably goes down to plus 150, and then you could theoretically cash out for profit. Or you could just hold it and then go away. Because again, if Florida does lose to Toronto, that plus 150 goes down to like a plus, that plus 200 goes to plus 150. So I don't hate the value there on. I don't hate the value on Minnesota. I kind of think they're a bit better than people think. I'm kind of liking this Minnesota team. Moving on here to the last match for Saturday. Then we got Sunday. First match is Optic versus Seattle. Optic is minus 400 on the money line. Seattle plus 275. Optic minus 1.5 minus 150. Seattle plus 1.5 plus 110. I've got this as about a 62-38. Um, I don't know. it seems like every time Seattle plays Optic, we're like, maybe this time's different, but then it's not different. It's still a 3-1. They came really close this last time. Maybe they could finally pull it off this next time. I don't know. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? I don't hate the value. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, this match, along with every other Chicago match, it feels like my model likes Chicago way too much. But it makes sense in my head, right? Like I talk about how much Seattle is just horrible at control. Chicago's a very good control team. Again, you take out Garrison, just basically chalk up the game 3 to Chicago.
And they
Um,
didn't take out Garrison. They let them play on Garrison.
Yeah, and I think teams finally understand that, like, okay, you're playing Seattle, just don't give them Garrison, and you should win the match. So hopefully that's what happens. And I think Chicago made a mistake of playing Garrison against someone else, not Seattle, or no, maybe I think it was Seattle. Yeah, never mind. But yeah, I don't know. Teams just want to play Seattle on Garrison, and it doesn't seem to work. But Chicago's the better hardpoint team far and away. They've shown a ton of improvement in search and destroy. I think a Chicago sweep is the most likely scenario, actually. Um, yeah, Seattle is just one of those teams that I don't know. They're not making roster moves. They've been fine. Like they've been kind of whatever the entire year. They've shown a little improvement from stage 1 to stage 2, but not enough for me to like them. Whereas Chicago, again, I go back to yeah, they've struggled in both majors that they've been a part of. They placed 4th in stage 1's major and top 6 in stage 2. But again, I go in, map out, and I just Chicago's been on the short end of the stick more than they've been the beneficiary. So and it's tough to say, right? Chicago has a match prior to this, and Seattle does as well. Yeah, but I don't know. I like Chicago. If you're going to take them, always take a minus a map and a half, basically. Um, but I don't know. This line could change a lot if Seattle shows up in their first match. Um, I don't. It's a tough one to bet because I mean Chicago's just such a big favorite, right?
Yeah. The other thing is that I mean, that's the Optic price. You're always paying that.
That's true. Yeah.
And I think that if you're looking at, I don't know, the -1.5 is not bad. The thing is, if like, if we're right, and then like, if Thieves beat Seattle, and then if London beats Optic, then this line becomes tighter, right?
Yeah. This line, I don't know. Yeah, it would move a lot if that happened. Yeah.
Well, no, but if Seattle still lost though. It would still be kind of lower, but
But yeah, I think London beating Chicago, I think would change a
move
lot.
Chicago down, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't know. I don't. Maybe the -1.5. I'm not betting. I'm not throwing 400 on a money line with Optic
No.
anytime soon. But I
No.
mean, the question is: is this bench Looney week? Is that what this is now? Is that what this week is going to be for Seattle? Is it the bench Looney week?
Maybe, I don't know. They're tough. They're one of the teams I think of like LAG where I just think they're gonna kinda stick it out for as long as they can. I do think Looney at some point is gonna get benched, but I don't know if it's now. Maybe if they go 0-2 after week 1, I think they'll reconsider it because it's like you can't bench Octane. He's kinda like the face of the franchise, I guess.
And he's doing okay.
Uh, and
He's not the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, and Gunless has shown that he can show up, and Prestini still is inconsistent, but has been improving. And Looney's just kind of been there. He's been the dirty work guy. He has a map every now and then that you're like, hey, if Looney can just do that every map, like honestly, if he has a hard point or a control where he goes dead even, 1.0 KD, you're like, okay, if he can just do that, the other guys should do fine and they should win. But there are just so many maps where he struggles quite a bit. And maybe it's just a speed thing. They need someone to keep up with Prestini, and he can't because Prestini is one of the faster players in the league. But yeah, Seattle, if they want a chance at like at showing up at a major, they need to make some sort of change or they need to improve drastically in control. I think is the first game mode they need to look at. Because yeah, they're just they're a team that I think a lot of people like because the names are like, you know, the names, and you're like, oh man, on paper this team should be good, but it hasn't been there for some reason. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna bet this game right now. I'll probably wait to see what happens with Chicago with each of their first matches. But um, I think if anything, I'll take Chicago minus a map and a half. But again, that could get way out of whack if Chicago, comes out really hot and Seattle looks very poor. Then it might not even be worth it. So
Yeah, maybe that's just a stay away, just to watch the
yeah.
Saturday night game and then hope for something crazy to happen, but don't be disappointed if it doesn't. And then again, if they probably lose both those matches, then that's probably assuming they can sign people. I mean, we don't know where because they're are they all in Atlanta or are they kind of spaced out?
I think Seattle you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they're all in Atlanta. And I think
so
that's
they
part of
could.
the reason why they want to keep their team intact is because they're all kind of committed to playing together. Um, so yeah, I don't know that'll be tough. I know London had a similar sort of thing early in the year when they brought in Parasite. They had to like move him to North Carolina, which is where they're playing still, I believe. So it's definitely possible for Seattle to take someone in and bring them into the Atlanta area, but um, yeah, I don't know. Surge are just that team for me that are like I just am like whatever about them.
Yeah, that's fair. I think. Yeah, we'll have to see how they do against the Thieves to do that. Speaking of the Thieves, they're the first match we have on Sunday. So, London versus the Thieves. London Thieves are minus 225 on the money line. London is plus 162. I've got this at about 55% chance for the Thieves. Um, I don't know if London wins though. There could be some value. If London does beat Optic though, there could be some value on the Thieves. Um, I don't know. What do you think about this? I kind of like the Thieves here. I still think even if London were to improve and beat Optic, I still think Thieves should be favored here. But if that happened, then they wouldn't be. What do you think London has a chance here or not? What do you have?
Yeah. So Chicago Seattle is a stay away for me. This game is like whatever. It's like a stay away times 50. Like Thieves, right? If they continue their success that they had in Major 3 or Major 2, excuse me, and continue that in and beat sorry, who's their first match again?
Seattle,
Seattle?
Seattle, yeah.
Yeah. If they come in and they beat Seattle like I think they should, um, and London struggle against Chicago, then this game is just a normal stay away from me. But if craziness happens, if Thieves lose to Seattle, obviously that wouldn't be a shocker. I have that again as the closest game of those first 2 days. But if London beats Chicago, like all bets are off because we've seen, right? London could just be the Thieves from the last major. Like you
Hmm.
bring in Zaptius and good things happen. And they brought in Paul X and instantly good things happen. And obviously they were brought back down to earth over the last couple weeks. But I don't know, roster moves just make this league so hard to predict sometimes. And I think this series is a good example of what that means. Like, right? I mean, it wouldn't shock me if London get the doors blown off of them by Chicago and come out and like sweep Thieves even after Thieves beat Seattle. Like craziness like this just happens. So from a value perspective, if those are the numbers you're giving me, I think Thieves minus a map and a half right now makes a little bit of sense. But I don't love it either way. It's a really really tough call. I think.
It could be a good stay away, especially if we see signs of London improvement against Optica there on on Friday. Um, I mean it'll be interesting. We'll get to direct comparison on Friday. So I think if you're gonna bet this, you'd probably bet this after Friday or during Friday at some point. But yeah, I think staying away from this. There's two other games on Sunday. I don't think this probably isn't the biggest issue. Next up is another particularly interesting game. Phase versus Subliners. Phase right now is minus 400 on the money line.
Whew.
Subliners plus 275. Phase minus one and a half, minus 163. Subliners plus one and a half, plus 120. I've got this as about a 60-40, so it's still out of whack for that. But the question though is in terms of height of the subliners. So it appears as though the lineup is apparently they wanted Sib, but they didn't get Sib. So it appears as though it would be what Hydra, Asim, Mac. What's even their lineup? I'm not even sure what their lineup is right now.
I think it would be so Clayster's obviously on a seam, but basically the one change I think is Mac is out and Hydra's in. That's what I'm getting. I could be wrong with
Is it
that. So I
Mac
think
or is it Diamond?
I don't know. It could be Diamond. What I think is it's Mac though. But either way, there's going to be something because Hydra is in presumably. Um, I think when people were like, "Oh, it's Sib and it's Hydra," then it was like, okay, so it's right. It's who is it out of Asim, Mac, and Diamond? And I think people were quick to say like it's not Asim, so it's probably the other two. I don't know. We're gonna find out, I guess. This is not a good match coming out of a roster move to get Atlanta, who I still have pegged as the number one team in the league by a, a long. There's a big gap between them and number two still, despite losing the stage two major. And right, it's important for people to remember that you look at map count Atlanta versus Toronto in the major, and they tied. They had a series earlier in the major that Atlanta won 3-1. So they won by two maps, and then Toronto come out in the major and they beat Atlanta by two maps, so it's even. Um, and yeah, Atlanta is just consistent. They're gonna figure out what went wrong. New York looked pretty bad. They dropped 2 spots in my power rankings from third to fifth. Still on that tier 2 of good teams that can take out phase. So it is possible, but it's a tough one. We need to see Atlanta improve in search. They looked very, very bad in the stage 2 major, and we need New York to just kind of show us some life because they got swept out of both of their series. I'm pretty sure they lost to Dallas and then to Toronto, right? Or am I wrong on that? I think it was Toronto.
Sorry, who? Atlanta?
New York. They lost to Dallas, right? They got swept by Dallas, and then Minnesota,
No,
maybe.
Thieves, Thieves.
Thieves, yeah, duh, yeah. So, um, yeah, we're gonna have to see a bounce back from them. I think they're a team that obviously can. Clayster's a very good player, and he gets his guys in order. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see who gets subbed in. But in terms of a betting angle for this game, for this match, I don't really see value in anything. Atlanta is too big of a favorite. I have this peg. I know you said it's a 60-40 game. I have this as an 80-20 game. Um, and yeah, it's tough to see anything with value. Even the -1.5 at -163 is steep. Um, I guess if you have a strong preference on right Atlanta bouncing back, maybe you can convince me that the -1.5 makes sense. But yeah, I think you can make a case that hey, New York, they're bringing in a new player, Hydra, who is super hyped up. It's a roster move. Teams improve after that. Maybe they don't win this. Obviously, they could, but even if they take it to a map 5, I think people are going to be impressed. So you can convince me that +1.5 is a good idea. I don't know. Do you have any strong feel about this?
I think you're not gonna catch me dead with Atlanta phase -400 in a parlay. I I don't know. I don't like them. I don't like the -1.5. Again, I kind of like to bet teams that just do a roster change, and that's actually like a pretty decent strategy. I don't know. Does phase play earlier in the week or not? This is the only.
No,
This is the only
both of
map.
their first matches. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is kind of like a bet New York or stay away. I kind of think. I don't think this is a like. I don't feel strongly about particularly either of these teams. Um, I don't know. I think New York could surprise us. I think they needed a change. I think they were always kind of just a little below the level. And again, they'll have 4 matches after this week anyway. Two more in the next two each in the next 2 weeks, right? So it'll give us more time to evaluate because they're in the group now with um what they have Optic, Seattle,
London.
and Thieves. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of teams in there. There's gonna be some value on. Like in some ways, it's probably better if subliners lose this because then you'll get them value against other teams like maybe
true.
London or
Yeah.
so we'll see. I don't know. I don't think Atlanta showed some weaknesses there. Now the question is, was it just because Toronto was playing so well because they were on a hot streak, coming off two straight win map like series wins, and then they came in hot, and then Atlanta just was flat, and now they're gonna figure it out and come in hot? Or, I mean, the last time New York played Atlanta, they've given them trouble in the past, especially in Search and Destroy. So I don't know. I mean, if New York can pick up the pace in hardpoint, which that's kind of what what Hydra's there to do, and especially in control, like I have New York favored over the hardpoints in them. I think if they can pull off a win in like a control in like a hardpoint, then this goes to 5, and then that plus 120 cashes, right? So
That's true. If you are gonna bet New York, which I think you could do, I like +1.5 a lot more than money line. I, yeah, I agree. I think that hard point improvement could be huge with New York bringing in Hydra. And search obviously is it's one of those modes that could go either way a lot of times, and Atlanta has looked very very poor. I think they bounce back a little bit and show some improvement. Um, but yeah, I'd love to see this go 5 maps, and I think there's a really good chance it could. So
mhm.
I don't hate New York plus a
I
map and a half.
I wait a little bit. There's a chance that because usually phase lines, we don't. First of all, we don't know the full New York roster. Also, there's usually phase lines get bid up, so
That's true.
there's a decent chance that a lot of phase money could come in over the week because this is still Monday, right? So there's a chance this line the phase line could balloon and that plus 1.5 could become like a maybe a plus 150, plus 175, maybe a plus 200 if there's unsure news about New York's roster, right? So we'll have to see. Maybe that's a bit too. Maybe it's a bit too much to ask to get to a plus 200, but I could definitely get to a plus 150, maybe a plus 175. So if it hits maybe more than plus 150, I'd maybe take a stab at New York subliners plus 1.5, especially if Hydra is playing. We'll have to see the roster moves. And finally, our last match of the week, Toronto and Dallas, the rematch of the losers round, the losers bracket final from a major two. They've got this dead even at minus 120, but they do have Dallas as their narrow favorite because they're giving us the spread, um, the positive spread on Toronto. Toronto plus 1.5 minus 225. Dallas minus 1.5 plus 162. My model has this as Toronto 58, Dallas 42. I kind of think Dallas wins this 3-1. I kind of think this is where like because this is exactly what happened last year too. Toronto beats Dallas in the semifinals of the Toronto home series. They go to champs. They're in the champs winners bracket, and then Dallas beats Toronto, and then Toronto goes to the losers bracket. They lose to London, and then they're out. Obviously, that's not going to happen because there's just pool play basically. But like, I could see, I could definitely see Dallas winning this. I kind of like. I don't hate the minus 1.5 on Dallas. We'll have to see. Um, but yeah, this seems like a perfect space for Toronto to choke and Dallas to get revenge. What do you think?
Yeah, I have this pretty close to where you have it. I have a 55-45 to Toronto. Um, so to make them both minus 120, I guess makes sense from a sports book perspective. So not really a whole lot of value on either team with that. Maybe a little on Toronto money line. Um, with that spread, again, not a whole lot of value either way. So I think they have it pegged pretty accurately. I do think what you said makes sense with Dallas minus a map and a half. Um, if they are going to win the series, it is going to be in 4 maps, in my opinion. Um, so I have them at a 10% chance they sweep, a 22% chance they win in 4, and a 12% chance that they win in 5. Um, and I think if Toronto wins, it goes to a map 5. And I think most of that is just due to Toronto are pretty big favorites in the search and destroy. I have them as the second best team in the league. Dallas, I have down at 8th overall. So there's a pretty big discrepancy in that game mode. But I do have Dallas as the third best hardpoint team and the third best control team, slightly favored over Toronto in both of those modes. So the blueprint for Dallas is winning hardpoint, control hardpoint. Toronto, it's something like win search, maybe win the control, and then win the other search at the end of the series. So the Dallas minus a map and a half, I can see this match again with a lot of matches is a stay away from me. I will say if Toronto come out hot and win their first match, it wouldn't shock me to see their number tick up past minus 120 on the money line. But I think for the most part, these numbers should stay where they are. Remind me who Dallas plays again in their first match. Paris,
Uh,
I believe, right?
Paris, yeah.
Paris, yeah. So yeah,
They both play on Thursday.
yeah, Thursday's games. Yeah, so both these teams should win those games. If one doesn't, you could just find value in whoever lost their first match. So be on the lookout for that. If Toronto disappoints in their first match and Dallas looks fine, there might be even more value on Toronto for this match, or vice versa if
That's a
Dallas versus Paris.
Yeah,
But
that's a
right
actually.
now, yeah,
I'll just say that for a second. It's a good point about the value. Usually on a lot of the books, especially on Bet365 and some of the other ones, they don't update the lines for later in the week. So, for example, if on Thursday Dallas beats Toronto or Dallas wins beats Paris, but Florida loses to Toronto loses to Florida, just bet Dallas because then you'll get that's the best price you're gonna get on that line. So, anyways,
hmm,
sorry about that. Go ahead.
okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, overall, this match should be the best of the weekend, the closest at least. Or I guess that Minnesota Florida match I have pretty close as well. But in terms of how close it should be and how good the teams are, this is by far the best match of the weekend. I get why it's the third one on Sunday. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think Toronto can stay with it and hang tough. And yeah, as it stands right now, I'd have them favored over Dallas. So should be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, my model has that too, but I think if there's anything we've learned from the first two stages is that when we think there's going to be a good match, it generally isn't a good match.
True,
And when we
true.
don't think it's going to be a good match, like Dallas playing Seattle in stage 2 suddenly is a best of 5 round 11 express.
Yes,
So,
yes.
I don't know. I just a bad feeling about this one, but I've had bad feelings about Toronto in the past, and it comes through. So yeah, we'll have to see. So, anyways, thank you for coming on, Ryan, to talk about the odds. You can follow him on Twitter at CDL Metrics, and yeah, we will hopefully be back maybe next week with the recap and predictions. Thank you, everybody.